There is a man, let's call him Dale, sitting at his kitchen counter on a Sunday morning with a vehicle pad, a laptop open to the Social Security estimator, and a mug of coffee that stopped being warm 20 minutes ago. Dale turned 62 in 9 days. He has worked since he was 19. He has a 401k with a reasonable balance, a house with 11 years left on the mortgage, 2 grown kids, one doing fine, one still finding their footing, and a wife who works part-time at a pediatric clinic. Dale has spent the last 6 weekends doing the same thing, staring at 3 numbers on that estimator screen. The number at 62, the number at 67, the number at 70. And every Sunday, he lands in the same place, paralyzed, because every auction feels like he is giving something up. Here is the part most people never realize. The question Dale is asking right now is not even the one he should be asking. If you want to understand how retirement decisions actually work in the right order, this channel will show you. Consider subscribing, because Dale is focusing on the wrong first step. Dale's mistake is not that he is thinking about Social Security. His mistake is that he thinks Social Security is the first thing he needs to figure out. Here is what I have noticed about the way most people approach turning 62. They treat the Social Security claiming decision like it is the opening move. Like everything else in retirement flows from that one choice. But in practice, that decision is more like the third or fourth domino. And if the earlier dominoes have not been set up, the Social Security choice gets made under pressure, not under strategy. What actually deserves attention first is something far less dramatic but far more consequential. Your taxable income picture in the years between when you stopped earning the full paycheck and when required minimum distributions and Social Security force income back onto your tax return. That window, often between 62 and 70, sometimes shorter, is one of the most valuable and most overlooked planning windows in a working person's financial life. Let me explain what I mean. When someone like Dale retires or even reduces hours at 62, their earned income drops, sometimes dramatically. For the first time in decades, they may be in a lower federal tax bracket. That is not just a fun fact. That is an opportunity. Because during those lower income years, Dale could potentially convert portions of his traditional 401k or IRA into a Roth account at a reduced tax cost. He could take strategic withdrawals from tax-deferred accounts to fill out the lower brackets before Social Security benefits, pensions, and eventually required minimum distributions push his taxable income back up again. Retirement researchers and many financial planners often call this the tax bridge or the gap years, and firms like Fidelity and Vanguard have written extensively about how retirees who ignore this window can end up paying significantly more in lifetime taxes than those who use it intentionally. The reason most people miss it is simple. It doesn't feel urgent. There is no deadline printed on a form. There is no penalty notice. It just quietly passes while you are busy agonizing over the Social Security question. And here is how these two things connect. If Dale claims Social Security at 62, he begins receiving a permanently reduced benefit, and he also begins adding taxable income to his return immediately. That collapses the low-income window. It shrinks or eliminates the opportunity for Roth conversions at favorable rates. It can also trigger provisional income thresholds that make a larger portion of his Social Security benefit itself taxable, a mechanism many people do not discover until they see their first full-year tax return in retirement and wonder why so much of their benefit is being taxed. Research regularly shows that a surprising number of retirees are caught off guard by how Social Security benefits interact with other income to create effective marginal tax rates that are higher than what they paid while working. That is not because the system is broken. It is because the system rewards sequencing, and most people have never been taught to think that way. So, if I were turning 62 tomorrow, the first thing I would file is not a Social Security application. The first thing I would do is build a clear picture of my fixed monthly obligations. Not my net worth, not my account balance, but the actual non-negotiable cash that leaves the household every month. Mortgage or rent, insurance premiums, property taxes, utilities, prescriptions, car payments if they exist, and any recurring support flowing to family members. That number is the floor. Everything in retirement is measured against it. Once you know that floor, you can ask a much better question. Can I cover that floor for 2, 3, or even 5 years using savings, a small pension, part-time income, or careful withdrawals from tax-deferred accounts without turning on Social Security yet? If the answer is yes, even partially, then you have optionality. And optionality is what allows you to use the tax branch, delay your Social Security benefit to a higher amount, and avoid locking in decisions under financial stress. The part people underestimate is how much fixed cost pressure distorts decision-making. Dale, for example, still has that mortgage. The interest rate is low. On a spreadsheet, keeping it makes perfect sense. But in practice, that payment creates monthly cash flow anxiety that makes him want to grab Social Security early just to feel like money is coming in. That is not irrational. It is human. But the emotional relief of an early benefit check often costs households tens of thousands of dollars in foregone lifetime income and tax efficiency. Many planners point out that reducing or eliminating even one major fixed obligation before retirement changes the emotional math entirely. It is not about the interest rate. It is about what that recurring payment does to your decision-making under pressure. There is also a Medicare dimension here that often gets missed. At 62, you are still 3 years away from Medicare eligibility at 65. If you leave employer-sponsored insurance, you may need to cover health premiums through the marketplace or COBRA, and the cost of those premiums is directly influenced by your reported income. If you have pulled the right levers, kept taxable income low through careful withdrawal sequencing, marketplace subsidies may be available. If you have already turned on Social Security and stacked it on top of other income, those subsidies may vanish, and your healthcare costs in that 62 to 65 gap could be thousands of dollars higher per year. This is not a technical footnote. For a lot of households, healthcare cost between 62 and 65 is the single largest underestimated retirement expense. So, what does a practical first week look like if you are approaching 62? This week, sit down and identify your real monthly floor. Not a guess, not a rounded number, but the actual total of every obligation that does not go away when the paycheck does. Pull your most recent Social Security statement and note all 3 benefit estimates. Write down every account you have and what type it is: tax-deferred, Roth, taxable brokerage, savings. That single page of information is more useful than 100 hours of calculator toggling. This month, begin sketching out what 2 or 3 years of post-work income could look like without Social Security. What would you draw from, in what order, and how would each source affect your taxable income? You do not need software for this. A pencil and a calm afternoon will get you 80% of the way there. If you are unsure, this is when consulting with a fee-only planner, even for a single session, can be worth its bait. This year, the goal is to build a system, an income bridge that gives your Social Security decision breathing room, a withdrawal sequence that respects the tax window, a fixed cost structure that does not force your hand, and a household cash flow plan that both partners, if applicable, understand and trust. Dale, by the way, did not claim at 62. Not because he read a blog post that told him to wait. He did not claim because once he actually mapped his fixed costs, realized his wife's part-time income covered more than he thought, and understood that 3 years of modest IRA withdrawals in a low bracket could save him significantly in lifetime taxes, the pressure to file just quietly went away. The Social Security decision stopped being the first decision and became what it always should have been, a decision that fits inside a structure, not a decision made in a panic on a Sunday morning. For most working families, the goal at 62 is not to optimize a single number. It is to build enough clarity that the big decisions stop feeling like gambles and start feeling like choices. That is not a luxury. That is something every household deserves.